For years now, I, like many others, have been hard at work at something. Something that haunts the minds of millions of people all over the world. Something so important to one group of people that it causes debates and arguments so heated it can tear friends and families apart. And that, my friends, is nothing more than a simple list. And today, I plan on sharing with you my personal list. And that list is my top 10 games of all time. So, I thought I'd get probably the most controversial entry out of the way first, seeing as this isn't a popular choice for like 90% of people. But Final Fantasy X was the first JRPG I had ever played, and it introduced me to a whole world of gaming that blew the mind of an 8-year-old me. And while its voice acting is...
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
like almost every 2000s game, it hasn't held up 17 years later. Its visuals though, especially in the recent HD collection, are still colourful, vibrant and very pleasing to look at almost 2 decades later. I've always loved a good horror game. There's nothing quite like the high tension atmosphere and the anticipation of waiting for something to jump out at you while you're exploring. And I don't think any game has embodied that better than Silent Hill 2. Narratively gripping with a story that has some amazing plot twists and characters, coupled with environments filled with dread, genuinely disturbing visuals and textures, and sound effects that can make your skin crawl. In an oppressive, isolated atmosphere that is so thick you can almost drink it in. It's no wonder it's considered one of the greatest horror games, let alone one of the greatest games of all time. My number 8 slot goes to The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This game is fantastic. What could be considered the polar opposite of Silent Hill 2. Wide open plains, gorgeous cel-shaded graphics, and an atmosphere that invokes the true feeling of being free to do whatever you want, whenever you want, all while exploring the expansive kingdom of Hyrule, set many thousands of years after the timeline split in Ocarina. This was my most anticipated game of 2017, and when I finally got my hands on it, I didn't put it down for weeks. Well, I cleared every shrine, found every Sheikah tower and collected... Okay, well, I never came close to collecting all of the Korok seeds. 900 just for a golden poo? Nah, thanks, mate. Now this next entry probably tickles my nostalgia bone the hardest. Gross. Spyro 2, Gateway to Glimmer, or Ripto's Rage if you live anywhere other than the UK, Europe or Australia, was the first PlayStation 1 game I had ever played, and the first game I had ever 100% completed. With over 100 characters, 25 worlds including a bonus one for those who got the 100%, minigames up the arse and plenty of secrets, this game kept child and adult alike entertained for days at a time. Also, the remaster is coming out this year and it looks delicious. This next game is basically what happens if you take James Bond and put him in the Metal Gear universe, but then add a jungle and put it in Russia. Does Russia even have jungles? Who knows. Set in the Cold War era of 1964, the same year that the creator Hideo Kojima was actually born, Naked Snake is sent into the far east of Russia to rescue a rocket scientist and kill his former mentor/lover who defected to the Soviet Union, betraying her country. The dense jungle and the rainforest environs of Russia, which is still confusing me, are luscious and thick with vegetation. Using them in conjunction with your camouflage index system to blend in and hide from enemies, and uncovering the true beginnings and downfall of Big Boss, kickstarting the entire series canonically. This game truly is one for the history books. Have you ever wondered what happens to a New York detective after he leaves the force? What he gets up to when he gets home to his apartment building? Have you ever wondered if a game can be based on snooping around on your fellow tenants, helping to solve in their basic daily troubles? Last Window follows Kyle Hyde as he spends his days at home doing such things, from finding lost rings to sneaking around a sealed off floor lost to time, all the way up to uncovering a plot to steal a jewel hidden somewhere in the apartments by a crime syndicate. This game does a bang up job of making you feel like a noir style detective, with amazingly detailed 2D animations using rotoscoping and stylised by art director Taisuke Kanasaki. Really brings the small but lore rich world of Last Window, Secrets of Kate West, to life. This used to be a rather under the radar JRPG series enjoyed by a rather niche audience, until developer Atlus finally found mainstream success with the massively popular and critically acclaimed Persona 5, which is both a life choice simulator during the day and by night is a highly addictive, well designed and narratively gripping story about a ragtag group of high schoolers turned supernatural thieves. Set in a highly stylized Tokyo made to look and feel like something straight out of a comic/manga series, you take the role of a silent protagonist of your own naming and engage in activities such as going to school, working part-time jobs, flirting with future waifus, killing hordes of demons, and stealing the hearts of the immoral and the corrupt. You know, typical high school stuff. Before I get into my top 3, I want to give a super quick shout out to 3 games that didn't make the list but still deserve a mention in my opinion. First up is Dino Crisis 2 for the PS1, the first quote-unquote horror game I ever played, and it still does get a very good laugh out of me with a really subtle penis joke towards the beginning of the game.
Back for more, One-eyed menace.
Next is Resident Evil 4, another contender by many to be the best game ever made, define future generations of Resident Evil games after it, and is a self-aware little romp through rural Spain, turning the locals' heads into jam. And the final honourable mention goes to The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I take it back, this is the thing that will get me crucified on my very first video. Placing the highest ranking video game in the world in the mentions is a death wish. It's a bloody fantastic game though, don't get me wrong, and this was the game that did start my obsession with the Zelda series. If you want over-the-top action, insane cinematography and choreography, coupled with a main character who makes you feel 100 times more badass just by association, then look no further than Devil May Cry 3. What many, including myself, consider to be the pinnacle of the 4 games, DMC Devil May Cry does not count, fight me, fast-paced combat that rewards skill with grades, orbs and unlockables, a silly but still rather good plot explaining the origins of Dante and his shop, some background on who his brother Virgil is and what happened to him, and of course maybe the best thing to ever come out of a video game in history, demon slaying, electric guitar that shoots electric bats and has a scythe in its body. Just perfection. What happens when a Square Enix developer and a Disney executive get in a lift together? You get Kingdom Hearts. And then what happens when just a few short years later, you refine the formula into what is the peak, the pinnacle, the absolute fucking zenith of gameplay? You get Kingdom Hearts 2, a masterpiece set in a mishmash Disney Final Fantasy universe with a lovable cast where Donald Duck and Goofy fight beside you, summoning beloved Disney characters to aid you in a story so dense, lore-ridden and bursting at the seams that even the most die-hard fans are still arguing over what is actually going on canonically to this day. It's overwhelming how much content is actually packed into this 12-year-old game, and with the highly anticipated 3rd game coming at some point this year, this series is going to ascend into godhood. My favourite game of all time is Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64. This game blew my mind as a child. Imagine, if you will, a small me sitting down to play what he assumes is going to be another Ocarina of Time. Colourful, fun, light-hearted, awesome music, and a story that would make me feel good when it's over. But no. What we got instead is a game where you are literally on a countdown to the end of the world and you only have 3 days to stop it. After Link saves the world in Ocarina of Time, he goes on a personal journey to find Navi, who decided to go walkabouts at the end of their last adventure. Along the way, Link is ambushed by this game's antagonist, the Skull Kid, who is being possessed by an occult mask known as Majora's Mask. After being lured into the world of Termina and transformed into a Deku Scrub by Skull Kid, Link then embarks on a grim, dark adventure to stop the moon from destroying the world. That is, after he's turned back by the mask salesman, who I still stand by the fact is probably the creepiest soul on the planet, all hunched over and rubbing his hands like a ginger Mr. Burns. This game is so well planned and laid out, it's unreal. Like Persona 5, it's a time management game first and an adventure second, all reliant around the game's gimmick of masks, 24 different masks that each have a unique trait or cosmetic effect. Helping out the townsfolk of Clocktown in the 3 days is also important, as helping these people will unlock new masks, access to new items, or even further the dark plots behind few key characters. With access to 3 masks in particular that turn you into a Goron, a waterborne Zora, or a Deku Scrub, who can shoot bubbles and use flowers to glide. The oppressive atmosphere and constrained feeling that the time limit gives off, coupled with how the music will slowly shift into a depressing, slowed down variation of the Clocktown theme, really drives the point home of how this is really all or nothing.